Welcome, travelers, to Cyberpunk 2077 Meets Magic Part 2. This is Eve, and I'm guessing you already seen Part 1, so you know everything you need already, and we can jump right onto our first card. Otherwise, link in the description. Saburo Arasaka, the Emperor, is a legendary creature human noble for Esper. He's a 1-2, and when he enters, you get the Monarch. At the beginning of your upkeep, as long as you are the Monarch, you put an influence counter on a permanent each opponent controls, and whenever an influenced permanent is tapped, drain its controller for 1. You can also remove 3 influence counters to create a tapped treasure. Saburo is an easy Esper character, seeking power through control and pursuit of groundbreaking technologies. With him as your commander, every player will do its best to make sure you don't get to keep the crown. You will want to play pillow fort cards like Ghostly Prison and Propaganda to keep being the monarch, and spread your influence to slowly drain your opponents out of the game. Life game payoffs can be interesting but unreliable, since your opponents can decide not to tap the influenced permanents. Even though if you start targeting their lands, it becomes harder and harder as the turns go on. Among the many other Monarch cards that are available, I would make a special mention to Court of Ardenvale, because if you are the Monarch, you get its very powerful reanimation effect, but if you are not, and Saburo is in your graveyard, you can get it back. Replaying him will make you the Monarch again to advance more onto your game plan. Sun Titan can be used in a similar way and is also a card I would include in a Saburo deck. The ability to cash out influence counters can be useful not only to ramp but also to make friends, ensuring some players don't lose any life for tapping their permanents. Or you can use cards like Dreamtide Whale and Flux Chandler to proliferate those influence counters. That way, you can keep Saburo's draining effect while at the same time generate resources. If you were wondering why Saburo creates tapped treasures, it's to balance it with proliferate effects. It would be way too easy to go infinite with a card like Viral Drake, for example. On a completely different note, Yorinobu Arasaka, Defiant Hair, is a 2-2 legendary creature human rebel, for 1 and a red. You can pay red and sacrifice a permanent to deal damage to everyone based on the sacrificed permanent mana cost. You can also pay 1 and double red to exile your hand and draw the same number of cards, and until end of turn you don't lose the game when drawing from an empty library. Yorinobu has also a last funny ability that wins you the game if he's your only permanent and you have no hand and library. So Yorinobu is a living bomb. He despises his father and the empire he built, rejecting everything the Arasakas stands for. He understands that the only power able to bring down Arasaka is itself from within. Yorinobu seizes power with that golden hand, truly a red mindset. Yorinobu will win the game when everything around him is in ashes. His last ability is more for flavor than for function. A Yorinobu deck will most likely win games by filtering its hand and flinging expensive permanents to everybody. Affinity for artifacts is a juicy mechanic to play high CMC creatures to protect ourselves and threaten attacks like Furnace Hellkite and Chisgoria Forge Titan, which become way more valuable in a Yorinobu deck due to his ability to dome opponents based on their unusually high mana values. Cards that tip the scale by giving Yorinobu lifelink while upping our artifacts count for affinity, like Shadow Spear or Resurrection Orb, are perfect, since they make every thrown permanent a massive buffer to our life total, along with damaging every opponent. For example, If we fling a Furnace Hellkite while Yorinobu has a Shadow Spear equipped, instead of dealing 7 damage to everybody, we deal 7 damage to every opponent and gain 21 life in the process. And while we are at it, we can throw in a Fire Emancipation for even extra fun. If you really want to win the game with this alternative win condition, however, I would suggest a big ritual effect, like a Mana Geyser, into something like Lion's Eye Diamond, into Leveler, and then you use the mana from the Geyser and Lion's Eye to sacrifice all permanents by Yorinobu and win. It's not easy to pull off, but I've seen weirder combos happen in Commander, so go for it if it's your jam. Now, onto the 3 Phantom Liberty characters I found the most interesting. Solomon Reed, Sleeper Agent, is a 4/4 legendary creature human soldier. For 3 and Azorius, he has Vigilance, Convoke, and can be tapped for 1 and a hybrid Azorius to counter a spell or ability that targets your stuff. It also allows you to pay a black whenever your creatures deal combat damage to opponents. If you do, you get to discard an online card from the hand. Solomon is a devoted soldier to his country, a sleeper agent, and one that employs throughout plans to minimize risks. Easily into Azorius colors, but he has a black ability. It's not his nature, but to prevent instability and protect his country, he will abide to whatever order is given to him, following the principle that morals sometimes need to be sacrificed for the greater good. A Solomon Commander deck would like a control backbone, complemented by small and evasive creatures that act as saboteurs and counterintelligence agents to prevent plans before they even happen. Cards like Shadow Mage Infiltrator and Doughty Voidwalker can fill this role perfectly, giving a hard-to-block attacker that can also fill a secondary role, in our case, Graveyard Hate and Card Advantage. Paying for all Solomon's abilities can be very expensive, so balancing between developing and keeping your guard up will be very skill-intensive. Running cards like Shadow of the Second Sun and Sphinx of the Second Sun will allow you to fully develop your board and discard threats from your opponent's hands while holding the interaction you need to lock the game down after the initial hefty investment. Soumi Songbird is a legendary creature human artificer for double blue and a black. It's a 2/3 that surveils 2 at the beginning of your upkeep, and whenever you surveil an artifact into your graveyard, you get to put a +1/+1 counter on each artifact you control. You can also pay 1 mana and tap her to return an artifact from your graveyard to your hand. Soumi is a subtle, deceptive, and at times cruel netrunner who squeezes everything and everyone into oblivion to get what she wants, working from the shadows, monitoring her peers, batters, and even lowers every move. That's as demure as you can get. In the command zone, Soumi has 2 primary ways to structure her game plan, but both need to start from a survey package. Enhanced surveillance is a pivotal piece to ensure you reliably find artifacts to dump and take advantage of Soumi. 2 other important pieces you will most likely want are Grim Captain's Locker and Sword of Once and Future, being among the best artifacts that can also provide you repeatable instances of surveil. Once your surveil package is taken care of, the most straightforward way to build Soumi is with artifact creatures, like Ethereum Sculptor and the Research Thief, since even a bunch of small utility bodies will quickly grow into a force to be reckoned with. The other way is to play other kinds of artifacts instead, like more monarchs than usual, or to generate artifact tokens. Unshakable Tail is perfect for our plan, being able to generate tons of artifacts with surveil synergies. But why would that be useful, you ask? Well, if you read Songbird carefully, she does put a +1/+1 counter on any artifact, not just creatures. So running cards like Cyberdrive Awakener or March of the Machines will make even a small number of clues into a lethal board. Last card for today will be Myers, Nusa President. For 2 and Esper, She's a 4/5 legendary creature human noble. At the end of your turn, she deploys soldier tokens equal to the number of creatures that died. She can also sacrifice soldiers to make mana, or you can tap Mayors to cloak a card from your hand. Mayors holds power and strives to maintain it. She's the Nusa president and cares most of all about keeping herself at the top than the well-being of the state. Not very original for a politician, in my opinion. She's willing to risk a war in order to claim back Songbird. Myers employs soldiers aplenty and isn't afraid to sacrifice them to solidify her position. Her last ability represents her employment of undercover agents like Solomon and Alex. When building a Mayor's deck, it's hard to focus on all aspects of the card. You could go for an Aristocrats deck, a Soldier Tribal deck, or a Blink deck. Trying to mix everything can not only be difficult, but hardly effective. You could fill your deck with untap abilities like 1000-Year Elixir, and blinks like the Die Navigator to cheat cloaked creatures for cheap, but that will hardly benefit your soldier's plan. There are cards that are just great and happen to be soldiers, like Esper Sentinel, and solid payoffs for spamming soldiers, like Skystrike Officer, that can make interesting going on that route. Also Flashback Marauder, and the myriad of different versions you can play of that card can create immense value with Mayors, since they leave up to 4 tokens to be then sacrificed for mana gain to push you deeply into an Aristocrat deck. You could probably make 2, maybe even 3 Mayor's decks that share nothing but the mana base and be effective, should you decide to run her as your commander. But there are some interesting ways you can exploit her abilities to the fullest. Cards like Carmen, Cruel Sky Marcher, for example. She's a soldier, a sacrifice payoff that can even bring back important pieces, and is expensive enough to justify wanting to cheat her with Cloak. Maneldor, Swift Savior, is both a soldier and a consistent way to blink cloaked permanents, to have them re-enter face up. Lastly, Captain of the Watch is a solid card to cheat, that can both pump your board of soldiers and create a lot of sacrifice fodder for Mayors. And with that, part 2 comes to a close. I tried to go a bit deeper into the cards this time, because I felt like in part 1 I was a bit too quick going over them. Let me know if you prefer this format, where I give you a more complete idea of the deck these cards can create, or if you like the more quick speedrun version of part 1 down in the comments. Stay tuned for the last part of Cyberpunk meets Magic, which will bring the last 5 characters I've made. This was Eve, thanks for watching.